Hello. Omar. Alright, everyone, welcome once again to our event on JavaScript Crash Course of Human Techmakers Berlin. Unfortunately, Arman couldn't make it. He's got the flu. He doesn't feel himself really good, so we will try to carry the flag today and try our best to continue this series of lectures. Today, my dear colleague Ömer is taking the stage. We've been working together for quite a while now, and here we are working at UNU together. He is mainly responsible for the UNU's e-commerce backend and the whole website. So he's making things run. He's keeping the website up and running so that we can continue our business. He's going to give a little bit insight about how to build APIs, how to build proper backend systems that respond to the user's request and then reply with proper responses back. And please give him a warm welcome. And before we get started, we have Omar here, and Sia here, and I, Mark, will be helping you. If any time you cannot follow, please interrupt. Raise your hand and ask questions. We'll be there to guide you and help you. And of course, it's also a shared effort. It's a community effort. Please try to help your friends that are sitting by you. So it would be amazing, because sometimes we cannot reach out to everyone, so you can easily just stop them. All right, now let's get started. Welcome once more.
Okay, let's first start with the physical problems. So we don't have a microphone today. If you can't hear me anytime during the lesson, just please interrupt me and I will try to speak louder. So let's make this thing clear first. And okay, should I?
Yes, please. And there is a link posted on the Slack. That is the link for this Hangout meeting, so that you can easily see what is being typed on the screen on your screens as well. Yeah, because if you cannot see the font size here, please join. But no.
Can we get rid of this sidebar maybe, because it's kind of covering my code? Anyway, so first of all, I want to thank you all because of your homeworks, because of your efforts there. Well, one thing to notice is that if you submit your homeworks on the last day, we will not be able to review them. So sorry for that.
I'll handle it.
Also, is it possible to hide this sidebar because it's covering my code?
I don't think so. No. Yeah, no.
Anyway, so I was talking about homeworks. If you can submit them during the weekend, that would be best for us, because we are working full time and we don't have any, extra time during the day. So we can only spare time during the evenings or during the weekends. So if you want a quick review, I think weekend would be the best. But if you can't do it on the weekend, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Like, if you can do it whenever you like, you can just do it, okay? So the most important thing is you do it. Then if you have time during the weekend, it's better, okay? So let's start covering, not really covering, but talking about what we had last week. So first, I will do a quick recap of these week 3 examples. Actually, these folders, this week 3 async file read, week 3 map objects, and the timeout example is the things that Arman covered in last week's lecture. However, he also put some extra codes inside this modules and services folder. And in our Slack channel, I saw that some of you noticed that this thing is a bit complicated and it's not really what we have covered during the last lecture. It's true, because this folder is actually kind of a spoiler, kind of a, let's say, preview of this week's lecture. So first, I will start explaining what we had in this modules and services folder. Then we will start building on top of it. So here it is. So I will continue with hiding the sidebar so that you can see more. So this index file, what we have is that we required our models. So we had 2 models. One is person and the other is meetup. So a person can attend meetup and a meetup can have multiple attendees and stuff. You already know this stuff. And we already implement the async function here. why we wrote async here? Why didn't we define just the function here? Anybody? Yeah.
To use the await.
Exactly. So if you're using any await inside the function, you have to put a async keyword in front of the function definition, so that JavaScript will understand this is an async function and it will behave accordingly. So is this all clear to you? This is all from last week's. So the thing that is not covered from last week's lecture is there is a new layer called person service. So the functions implemented inside this person service is already covered during the lecture, but the concept of service is not really introduced in last week. So what is a service? In last week's examples, like for example, if we can look at any other example here, like here index. No, this is just reading it. So in our index file, we were requiring models, but we were also creating the objects directly inside our index model. And when we want to do some operations, like when we want a person to attend the meetup, we were also doing the same operations in the following lines of the exact same file in our index file. Then if you want to save these changes, we were doing it in the again same file. Then if you want to reach our data, we were again doing the operations in the same file. So it was a bit convoluted here. So in this folder that I was saying that is not covered in the last week's lecture, we introduced a new layer called service. Service is actually nothing complicated. So it is basically the whole collection of functions that helps us do these operations. So let me go over the functions that is implemented here. So you're gonna see that is nothing new here. It's like already defined functions for us to use. So for example, there is a find all function. This is again an async function because.
And yeah, this file is already available in GitHub. You can just pull the repository or just get copy the file. Don't please try typing it all. It's already there available for you, right?
So this folder is already there. I'm reading through what is already in our GitHub repository. So we have an again async function here that is named find all. What do you think that this function does? Yeah.
Can we start with the path? The constant path.
This one, db path.
I mean, I know the constant, but the $sign and then what's behind it's a bit optional.
All right, okay. So I saw in a couple of your homeworks that you already use this underscore dirname. This is a special variable in Node.js. It gives you the current directory. So wherever your file is, this dirname variable gives you that directory so that you can access the relevant file.
Let me take a step back there. Yes, that dirname gives you the directory name, but the question basically would start with this backticks and dollars, right? Yeah. Normally in JavaScript, you would just define a string with a single quote or a double quote. You can use either of them, doesn't matter. And you can add strings together with the plus sign. Like you can just take one string and the other string and then just add them together with the plus sign. But if you want to use a variable, in this case, the directory's name is a variable. It changes, right? Like for everyone, it could be different. It's a variable. And for you to add it to your string, either you have to take this dirname variable, add a plus sign by it, and then add the string afterwards. And then maybe if you have 3 or more variables, you have to add a lot of pluses there to just create the string there. JavaScript comes with a convenient way to just use the variables inside the strings. Here in this case, this is a backtick. This is a special quote that you can find in your keyboard. It's very different in every keyboard. It's a backtick. Just search for backtick for your keyboard and you will please find it. Start with a backtick and with a backtick, and then just you can write regular strings inside, but you can also use variables inside. For you to insert variables, you just add a dollar and curly brackets inside the variable's name. It will be just directly inserted to the string without you having to use the plus sign, right?
So the dollar is for variables?
Yeah, dollar and the curlies, that they represent variables. You can just use any number of variables inside a single backtick string.
Arman is here.
Mhm.
Okay. Also, I saw that in Slack channel, a couple of you asked this question: why we can't write await and fs read file? And I think I have answered privately, I guess. So, can anyone give me the answer? Why we can't just type await and fs.read file? And why did we need to define a new promise here? Come on, I told you. No? I don't remember names, but I will find. Okay, let me give you the answer then, because I don't remember the names. If I knew, okay, you will be in trouble. So this fs is file system read file. This function doesn't return us any promise. So in order to be able to use await keyword, you need a function that returns a promise. Let's take a look an example that a function that returns a promise. For example, here. So find all. When I hover this function, you will see that it returns as a promise. So it means that I can directly use await keyword here, so that, for example, if I move to 21st line, I will make sure that this find all is already executed and I have the result in all people variable. But here, let's go back to previous example. Because this fs.readFile function, fs.readFile function doesn't return any promise, it only accepts callbacks, we have to do this way. So we have to use this function by providing a callback function here, as here. Okay, is that clear? I think that was also a question in your homework. So if you want to use read file function with a promise, you have to do that. You have to write your own promise for this fs read file. Otherwise, you have to use with callbacks.
Let's just make sure that everyone is on the same page here, because it could get a little bit complicated. Can anyone raise their hands and tell me what a promise is? Let's just reiterate the basics. Please don't be shy. There is no wrong answer. Please.
Well, it's a function that says I'm going to bring something back to you later.
Okay. Yeah.
Doesn't
She said it's a function that brings you something back later, like in the future, right? It gives you a promise. It will promise you that it will return you something, that the name, where the name comes from. I promise you to return the value, but not right now. I just have to do something. And then whenever I'm done, I'm just going to give you back. If not, I will just say that I don't know, reject your promise. I'm sorry, but I have to reject your promise. It's not working for me. It's not you, it's me. It's just not working. But if it can fulfill the promise, then it will give you the result back. So it's a promise into the future. And previously, before the promises, we were using something called callbacks. And just like Ömer showed you there, the read file function, if you remember, we started read file sync. It was just synchronously reading something. Whenever you asked it to read something, it was just doing the operation at that time, and then it was keeping you waiting. You cannot do anything else while it was reading the file. And after it read the file, it will just give you back the result. But there's another way of doing things, which is the read file, which is a default one, because you don't have to add the sync at the end of it. And you just tell it to read the file, and it will tell you that it has read the file just like the promise, but in this case with a callback function. That's something we call a callback. It's just like promise, I will call you back, it says. Before the promises, we were calling ourselves back, but now we give ourselves promises so that whenever the result is available, we give the promise back. So this read file doesn't return a promise, instead it takes a callback argument. It is just like any argument in the field, just like giving a name or something. You just give it a callback and say that whenever you're done, whenever you're finished with reading the file, just call this function, this callback function with the data that you have or with the error that you have if you cannot succeed, and then I'll take over things from there. So this is that thing. Just don't look at the promise part, just the read file part. So whenever you give it a callback, after it reads the file, it will just execute the callback. But as we said, we want to use the await statement, right? We want to use it everywhere in our code. So for us to use await, we have to have promises. We have to have something that returns promises. So here in this specific example, we are wrapping this fs read file with a new promise, right? Please take over from that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I guess that people were just looking blindly.
And so that means promise is also a callback function, but in the background it's working and working, and as the things are done, and it returns.
You could say that, definitely. They do things, like there's an operation that is being done, and after the operation is completed, the promise returns its value. So it is like a callback function, but it looks more elegant. You just can continue doing your other things, and then make sure that whenever the promise returns, you would just have the result with the dot then or the await statement here in this case.
So what about async then? Like, the async also does this.
Async is the way that we designate that we like if a function returns a promise, we call that function an async function. It's actually the same thing. For us to be able to use the await keyword, we have to tell the Node.js that this is an asynchronous function, that it will return a promise so that it understands that I can wait this thing. So it is basically the same thing. If something returns a promise, then it is an async function.
And what is the practical implication of this? I mean,
Promises versus callbacks, or anything asynchronous at all?
anything. Will I be able to see this on the website if the code runs promises?
Like 99% of the websites probably uses asynchronous functions in their JavaScript code. So it allows you to write code in such a way that you don't have to wait for other things. You can do other things while something is, let's say we will cover this in the next lectures, obviously, but in the backend example, while you're reading the file, it's a very costly operation. You just have to wait a lot for the operating system to read the file. Meanwhile, you can do other things and wait for the file system, that file being read. It just takes too long. And you don't have to wait. You can do other things. In the case of a web server, you can respond to other people's requests while waiting for a single person's request. Like some person asks something from the file system, you should reply the other customers as well. So this allows us to serve other things while doing other things. So it's an asynchronous thing.
I have a trouble in the homework, so I have actually a question here. Because in the last week we saw actually different type of this callbacks and then implementing the promises. Like in the first one where we wrote like let refile and then we go and return new promise and something. Then we continued actually like saying refile then and then the fourth version was like actually just as in a way.
Exactly.
So yeah, I tried first of all in my homework actually using directly this as in a way, but because it was the expected behavior in the homework, like it's the latest version that we're using, latest feature that we're using in JavaScript, but it didn't really work because I didn't really understand that I still have to put
Let's take a
promises.
look at it after the class, maybe you're...
But the question is, we always have to like to write them as in a way. We always have to define a promise before, or not.
Generally, a lot of functions that you use with the libraries and everything, they already return, but whenever you hover on them, you see that they return a promise. But when you're doing the job yourself, for the things like FS read file, if they don't return a promise, then you have to wrap them in the promise, just like we do here in the example. But most of the time, you just the things that you already use return promises anyway. But everything in itself, like if you go down if you read the source code of everything that you use, they all have this new promise somewhere in there. It has to return. You have to say that it returns a promise. It just doesn't happen magically. But a lot of libraries in the future, like we're going to be in the databases, we're going to learn about a lot of things. They all use promises so that it's easier for the developer to use. But if you're doing your own thing, just like we do here, we are building our own kind of database here. We are wrapping everything around promises, just like in the example. Right.
Any other questions?
Please don't be shy.
Why then we complicate our life? Why don't we just, for example, in this async function, have instead of return new promise, have a function with parameters resolve and reject and then return people? Why can't we implement this?
Yeah, if we use this callback function, if that callback function has something else in it that calls another thing, it will have another callback function. And if it has, like we can just continue over this, if you have 10 functions that call something else, you would be what we call a callback hell. it will be callback inside callback inside callback inside callback. It is completely unreadable, and that was our life back in the day. There was no other way. We had to deal with it. There was a lot of functions inside functions. It made impossible to read the code. Now with the promises, we can have the dot then even before the async await. It was even better. It was better than what we had before. But now with the await, we can just write beautiful code, just line after another, and you can easily read it. Please take a look at last week's example with the like 4 different versions of doing the same thing. You can just see how beautiful the code gets after you add new things with the async. Actually, it's not complicating our life. It actually makes it easier.
I just wanted to say, I think it's confusing. The thing is, inside of the promise, we are using callback. This make everyone, I think, the
Okay.
most confusing.
Understand, that is the definition of the read file. It is not our function. It is provided to us by Node.js. It is a native function that Node.js allows us to use. We didn't write it. Hopefully, I'm sure it will be. In the future, the read file will return promise. It will make everything much easier, but they don't want to break the backward compatibility. A lot of people have been using this like this for a long time, so they don't want to break it, and they don't want to add something like read file promise or something. Probably they will announce that they will change this behavior in this version, and they will announce it like 1 year before, and everyone will change their code so that nothing will break in production. But changes like this is one of the core functions of this. It's really hard. You have to announce way beforehand, so not to break people's production code. But it will be. Currently, we don't have any other way.
As for a reminder, so this return here is when it's a async function with the promises. It's like default, so it gives back what's loaded faster.
I didn't get it.
If there's like many things, right? Because it's for that we don't have to wait. The requests are handled at the same time, and the first, which is completed, is kind of like served.
Okay.
So it's like by default, and with something like then we can set our time. What should be shown first, what second, and so on.
Yeah, you don't get to order things, but generally, whenever things are finished, they get the order themselves. So, like whatever finishes first, it will just get the priority.
In this function.
No, this function is a single item by itself. While it's waiting things, it won't do anything else. This function specifically, but your whole code can do other things meanwhile. But this function won't do anything. It will just wait and then will execute what is inside. But it's like the Node.js can do, like the whole code can do other things. Right? Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, let's continue. Sorry for hijacking your lecture.
Okay, one last note about it. Actually, the whole idea is make sure that like JavaScript does a lot of asynchronous functions, asynchronous operations, and the whole point is that we want to make sure that one process, one job, one task is executed after the other. So we are kind of discussing how to write in a different ways. So that's all it. So the background mechanism doesn't change a lot. So we are kind of trying to make sure that, for example, this JSON parse is executed after I have finished reading the file. That's the whole point. You can do it with promises, you can do it with like async await, whatever. So the whole point is we are trying to order things. That's it. So I continue scrolling down a bit. So we have here add function. This simple function actually first fetches all the people, and then it is getting the last people that we added in our database, actually in this case in our file. Then we are trying to decide what would be the next ID, because in this function we are going to add a new person to our database, right? And we don't expect the users to specify as IDs. Like for example, if you write a comment in Facebook, you don't specify your ID, right? You just write the comment and Facebook automatically decides and gives an ID to your comment. Then you can share your comment because it has an ID. So here it's a kind of implementation detail, but if we have a person object here, then we should assign an ID to that person. Then we can create a new person. I think you are all familiar with how we create a person. So it's person model.create, and as a parameter, we pass the person object. I believe you already covered another way of creating a new person. Can anyone tell me? It includes the keyword new. Exactly. So we could actually here type new and person model, and then we can actually pass the person object here, and we could do the same thing. So in this example, it has no difference. So in our this add function, we have another async function here. How do I understand this an async function? Because I'm seeing an await keyword here. It means that this say all returns a promise, and before I make sure that this say all operation is completed, I don't want to finish executing this function because it's important to me. When I add a new person, before returning any result from that function, I want to make sure that the saving operation is completed. But saving operation is asynchronous, as you already know. The only way for me to make sure that it is completed before I return is to put this await keyword, so that when I reach this line 30, I make sure that save all operations is completed and it's all done. Okay. So we also have delete and find functions here. I'm not gonna go into details explaining how we do it. This code is already available on GitHub because I want to move further towards our topic. And maybe I can just cover how we do this say all, because you're gonna see the same structure that we have in find all. It is again, this FS library doesn't provide us any promises, so we have to write our own promises. So you see the pattern here. If you want to use promises, but the functions that you're trying to use doesn't provide you any promises, you define your own promise. If the function that you're trying to use already defines promises, then you just use it, like this one. So this del, say all, or add functions, the functions that we wrote already returns promises so that I can use await. Yeah.
So you said if one function is not providing us promise, so how to identify that the function is going to give us the promise or not?
Well, you have to look at the source code of that function. That's the only way. But in this case, for example, if you are talking about this fs read file, it has tons of documentation, so I know exactly that it doesn't return any promise.
And your IDE helps. Like whenever you hover on a function, it just says whatever it returns and what it.
So it doesn't return anything, I guess. It doesn't fit on my screen, but
it doesn't fit on the screen. But normally, if it returns a promise, it returns a promise.
Like for example, this function that we wrote, we know that it returns a promise, and it's quite simple. The IDE helps us.
And like how to find out what is a native function of JavaScript or not, or so where could we find out this? There are some native defined function from the JavaScript library or not?
If you wrote that function function is yours probably.
No, but sometimes we have already something like simple prompt or alert. They are already written function by JavaScript itself.
Yeah, there is a huge documentation on Node.js website. So it is like it comes with experience. What is with Node.js and what is not. So it's always nice to read documentation. But most of the time, if you're using an external library, you should go and check its like README and their source code, whether it returns a promise or not. And if you write your own function, then you already know what you're using. And whatever Node provides, you just have to know. Like it's just there's no like magic pill that I can give you. Like this is a native function. This is not. You just need to know that fs is a Node.js native function.
And the other way to know that, I think like some of you had this error. So if, for example, this fs read file, if you try to use it with await and if you didn't provide any callback, it's gonna cry. So yeah, you will see a lot of errors there about this function needs a callback function. So okay.
The question is, what exactly are you doing at line 22?
All right, okay. So let me go line by line. So last person is, as you can tell from the variable name, is the last person in our database. But so this might create a confusion. This and it's a okay. So I'm getting the last person from my database, but it can be the case that my database is empty. So it may be it's really possible that I don't have anything in my database. So in that case, this last person variable will be undefined or null, right? So in that case, I don't want to try to access this ID attribute of last person, because then my code will crash, right? Because I'm trying to access ID attribute of an undefined object.
Without getting into detail, I will just read the statement as, because I'm going to define the last person's ID as a last person. If it exists, it's ID. If it doesn't exist, then use 0. This is just like an if, else, then kind of thing. Not exactly, but it basically what it does is, if last person is available, then use its ID. If it's not, then use 0 instead. So this is a tricky way of writing that whole statement.
So yeah,
yeah, there are no brackets. You could easily add a bracket with here, like before the last person and after the last person ID. They are just a block by themselves. If there's last person, then use the ID. And then the or, that double type, that line there, that means an or. It's just or 0. Like it's just a failover value. Like if the other things don't exist, then just use this value as a failover. Something.
Isn't that a Boolean way of writing?
It's not Boolean. Currently in JavaScript, it's a little bit more complicated. We can talk about that. But here, it's just this and means if it exists, then use this. The or means it's just if it doesn't exist, just use this value as a table.
Is there any other questions? If not, I'm gonna move to our. Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
So when you write your own functions, how do you know if you have to use a promise in that function? So what use cases do you declare promises for this function?
Well, for example, let's say you implement a function that sums up numbers. So in that case, you definitely don't need to return any promise, right? Because it's like you just sum up a few numbers and then you need to directly return the number. But in this case, we are doing a lot of asynchronous operations. Like we are in this find all example, we are reading data from our database. In this case, it's a file, but we could do some other operations. But we could make request to some other API. We could do some other asynchronous operations, and I need to make sure that they are in order. And also I need to make sure that I don't finish executing my function before all these asynchronous things are completed. So in these cases, you need to define your functions in that way, so that you need to know that that function does some asynchronous operation, so that anybody who uses your function needs to use your function with this await keyword.
I need to add something. It's generally an external dependency. You just the times when you need asynchronous things is just when you wait for things that you don't have control over. Just like a file that is being read from the file system, you don't have any control over it. You just wait for the file to be read. It's an operating system's job. It's Windows' job. It's macOS' job. It's another person's job to read the actual file. You don't write the code on how to read a file from the file system. You have no idea actually. You just ask the system to read the file for you, and then you have to wait. You just have no other way of doing it. The same thing for external requests. You just want to ask for something from another website. Like it's a completely external dependency. You just have to wait. There's no other way around it. If you're writing your own functions, let's say mathematical functions or whatever, you can do everything in a synchronous way, not asynchronous. But if you're waiting for other things, that's what we call I/O, like input/output. Node.js is a non-blocking I/O based language. So when the I/O, that is a network request, that is a file system, that's something outside of your code, then you have to wait for it. That is the only thing. Or you can play with time. Like if you want something to reply back after 10 seconds, then that also you can create promises for that. That is the only thing that you could do with your own code. But other than that, it's always an external dependency that you have to wait. Right?
Okay, one last thing I need to mention about this file is that at the end of the file, you're gonna see this module.exports thing. Can anybody tell me what this is? Why are we doing this? What is the function of this module.exports? Why are we trying to do that?
We basically can use it in different files.
Exactly. So in this case, I'm exporting these 4 functions: find all, find, add, and del, so that whenever I require this service from any other file, I can directly use these functions. So these functions will be available to me. And in order to maybe avoid confusion, why I didn't write delete, but I shortened it a bit, because delete is a keyword in JavaScript and it's gonna get confusing. So we use del here. Okay.
What's the difference between find all and find?
Let's take a look at the code.
Find all reads the file from our database and it returns all the people. It doesn't do anything. It reads the file and parses it and returns all the people. Whereas find actually uses our find all function. It fetches all the people, but in this case we need only one person. And this find function also takes a parameter named person ID. So from all people we find the person that is that we need here.
It just finds inside the all people that whether that ID equals to the ID. We just pick that thing and return. It just returns a single person, while the other one returns everything.
The last one, save all.
Could you please repeat? I couldn't hear the question.
He exports find all, find out, del, not save all.
Well, probably I didn't need it. We can.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
If you need it, you can export it. It's a contract for the outside world. If you don't need it outside, then we don't. There are a lot of functions that we don't export to the outside because they're what we call private functions, kind of, that we don't want anyone else to access. Whatever you export, people can access. And
So,
in this case, we don't need it.
In this case, we don't need it. Also, we didn't really export this file because save all is actually writing to the file. So this function is responsible to write data to our disk, right? So I don't want any other people to use that functionality. I only want people to use, for example, this add or delete thing. So if you want to add a person, you can use this add function. If you want to delete something, you can use my delete function. But if you want to save something to database, no, you shouldn't use my save all file because it's gonna mess up my data.
That's really, really good. Exactly. In this case, obviously, you don't want anyone else to save the file. Only you should be able to save.
So I will start with the ending actually. So I'm gonna check out to master branch. So the master branch has the end result of today's lecture. So at the end of today, you're gonna have that functionality in your code base. You can see the result in the folder named week 4. Okay. So week 4 is actually the copy paste of what we have just gone over, right? This week 3 models and services. I copied and pasted this function, this folder, and I just renamed it week 4. And I did a couple of things while preparing for this lecture. And now I'm gonna execute my index.js file and I will show you the end result. And after that, we will do it step by step so that everybody will have the same result. And by the way, like if you don't like typing with me, as I already said, you already have the file, you already have the end result, you can just follow it there. But if you have the urge, if you like, we can do it together, okay? So I'm in the master branch. So I'm typing, all right, maybe I should go to week 4.
Please make sure that you're in the correct folder.
So I'm in the week 4. Well, I a bit cheated here because I think when you clone the repository, you have to type npm install, but I already did, okay. So I typed node index.js and you see a output here. It says server listening. This is today's topic. We are gonna implement an HTTP server. What's an HTTP server? Okay, you will know at the end of this lecture.
So let's learn. Does anyone know what an HTTP server means? It's a fancy name. Yes, please. It is something that takes web requests, like the requests that are coming from the web, right? From your browsers actually, and just gets them and replies back, right?
That is a good definition. Yeah. Okay, that's what we're gonna implement today. So in previous 3 weeks, we implemented something in Node.js, but you know, those adding people and making people attend some meetups, they were all happening as soon as you type Node and index.js, right? But in normal cases, you don't want that. Like for example, you will not be able to find anything like that in Facebook source code. Can you imagine, like some people in Facebook types Node index.js and suddenly people are commenting and have pictures, have galleries or whatever. It doesn't work like that. You need users to create that actions. So we are going to implement that kind of web service so that you can actually create people, you can make people attend meetups, and you can get the list of meetups, list of people via web request, not in the Node.js. Okay? So this is end result. So I'm going to show what we have. So when I go to maybe a bit larger, and also here.
You remember from the first lecture ever, Arman used this Chrome browser. We didn't know Node.js back then. We only had the Chrome, and Chrome has a JavaScript engine in it already that we could type commands. Like we did a lot of things during the first lecture. So we're back to the browser. This is the client side of things. It's not where the Node.js runs, but where the Chrome actually runs. We're going to do a few things in our code base so that we will start the request from here, and our web server on the backend will reply back. So we are taking the thing from not only from the backend, but we're extending it to the client, to the users now. Now we are in the browser domain.
I think I cannot make this address bar any bigger, so sorry for that. So that's why I'm going to read out loud whenever I type something to address bar. So at the moment, it just says localhost 3000. In a moment, we will talk about it, what does this mean. And at the end of the day, we would have implemented a functionality that returns all the people in our database. So I just type localhost 3000 and /person/all. So we are going to implement an endpoint. We are going to implement a web server that responds our requests in a way that we have all the people in our database. So I'm squeezing in some keywords here. We're going to cover that all. And we will also implement some, again, endpoints so that you will be able to create people. You will be able to create meetup. You will be able to make people attend meetups via your browser, not inside your web server. Okay? All right. So I'm stopping my server and.
Does it make sense? By the way, like this whole websites, web servers, HTTP, the website that you're on, they all require user actions. Whenever you're on Facebook, you just click something to start an action. You add a friend, you comment something, and everything starts with the user, with the client, generally. And from up to this point, we're always doing everything in our code and not faking, but making the actual operations line by line, and then we were running the code, and it was just happening all automatically, like in a microsecond. But now our web server will do nothing but just wait. It will just wait until you do something. You will just add a friend. You will attend the meetup. The user will tell the server what actually he or she is doing, so that we will just process that request, save it to the database. Or in this case, it will just ask for who are all these people, and it will just add /person/all. It's just a request. You request the server to give the person list back to it. And then the server will understand that you're wanting the person list, and the person all means that you just want all of the persons, and then it will just provide you with a list of persons. So this is an on-demand thing. Whenever you ask it, it will do the same thing back, over and over. Right?
Okay, so now you're seeing index.js file from last week. So as you can see, we were requiring a lot of files, our models and servers, and we were doing some console log, we were doing some asynchronous operations here, we were creating people, we were making those people attend some meetups and stuff. But now, today, we're gonna implement a functionality that enables people to do these operations by themselves. So you don't have to type every person, you don't have to create every person by yourself, but let's say you will need kind of a register function so that people actually register themselves, right? So this is our current index.js. As you can see, this is empty. So the first thing we're gonna do is to create a web server so that, like previously I just typed localhost 3000 and I would be able to get an answer from that. So let's start talking about localhost. Have you ever heard of localhost before? Is that quite new word for you?
We use it to try out code for SAM server.
Sorry, what?
Some? It's a company.
No,
What?
XAM.
AMP, yeah. I don't know if it's XAMPP. Yeah.
Yeah.
XAMPP, let's say, or X.
So we have that installed and we use the localhost to try out.
Exactly.
That is correct, actually. So localhost is a keyword to our own computer. So localhost is actually a valid web address. So for example, facebook.com or twitter.com or any other website is pointing to somewhere, whereas localhost is a special website that points to our current computer. That's it. But how does it work? So I also typed localhost 3000 here. Do you know what is 3000? Port. Okay, really? Oh, I wasn't expecting any answers. I'm really happy now. So, but for example, when you type facebook.com, you don't actually type the port. Do you know why?
Yeah. 180.
That's correct. So actually you are not
80, he says.
you're not typing any port, so that you're kind of redirected to default port. So you're using the default port. If you're using default port, you don't have to type anything. So the default port is 80. Don't ask me why it's 80. I don't know who decided that. But whenever you type, for example, google.com, you're actually typing here google.com and 80. But as soon as you type, I'm sorry, I can't make it bigger. As soon as you type this 80 port is discarded because it's useless. You're typing just a default port. You're directly redirected to google.com. Then let me ask you second question. So whenever we type localhost, how does this browser, how does my computer understands that I need to reach my local computer? Okay, let me rephrase that. For example, now I type google.com. How does my browser, how does my computer knows that where google.com is?
The domain.
Mm-hmm.
Google.com is a domain. That is correct. Okay.
There's like a register somewhere where it goes off and asks where Google.com stuff is, and then it goes off.
That is correct. That is.
DNS server.
What's a DNS server? Yeah, we are getting that.
So like DNS service is like we type google.com and DNS server all over, so they are installed all over the world, and they know that the IP address, what is the IP address of DNS, so google.com, and so we type google.com and the DNS server turns it to the IP address of google.com and sends that request to the server.
That is 100% correct. Actually, I think it's not a secret that we ask these questions in our interviews, and most of the people can't answer this question. So we basically ask what happens when you type google.com, and believe it or not, half of the people fail that question.
So that means I have the job.
We have 20 more questions.
Yeah, I just created. So whenever I type google.com, as he already said, there are some DNS servers all around the world that is only purpose is to match these domain names to IP addresses. So we have a new keyword. He also mentioned that IP address. What's an IP address? How does an IP address look like?
IP4 or IP6?
Oh, okay. Very good.
IP4.
So whenever I type google.com or whatever.com here, there are some DNS servers all over the world. So my browser asks those DNS servers about, okay, I need to reach google.com. What is his IP address? Is Google he or she? It, okay. I believe it has a gender in German. So after DNS server returns me the IP address, my browser knows exactly where Google server is. So it's making another request, but this time it's actually making a request to get this content, this search bar and these buttons. And in this case, I think I have a animation here. So while recording the screen, no, it was a bad idea. Yeah, okay. Sorry for that. That was my curious thing to click on that video. Sorry. So I was talking about these DNSs and IP addresses. So after my browser, my computer knows where google.com is, it tries to fetch the data, the content from the Google servers, and it just displays it here. So actually today, what we're going to kind of simulate is that we're going to implement a web server that is going to run in our local computers, but at the end of the day, you can actually deploy that code, you can actually put that code in a server so that whole world can use your web server as if like your Facebook, as if you're at google.com. That's that simple. So back to localhost. Actually, localhost is another domain name. So as all domain names, it needs to map to an IP address. In our case, it is actually, I don't know why, but everybody seems to know this IP address. This is the equivalent of localhost. But somehow, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, people thought that typing this number is hard, and sometimes you might be confused if it is all zero, if that was maybe 1 here and 0 at the end and stuff. They thought that, okay, all websites, all IP addresses have a domain name, why not localhost? So they create this keyword, localhost. It also matches to our local IP address. In this case, it's the IP address that I just typed. Can you see it? I think that it's 127.0.0.1. So it is the equivalent of if I type localhost or if I type that IP address, it's the same. So in that case, we have. Okay. So talking about this example, for example, if I know the IP address of Facebook, can I just type IP address of Facebook instead of typing facebook.com? Does it work? Yeah, exactly. Why don't we do that? Exactly. So it's the shortcut of that IP address. So instead of typing Facebook IP address, we type facebook.com because it's easier to remember, and also it's a kind of advanced thing, but Facebook has more than one IP address depending on where you are, I guess. So it's much easier to remember, and it is for us to use. So for machines, actually they only use IP addresses. For us humans, we use domain names. So in our case, in all the examples, in all the tutorials that you're going to find in the internet, I think they're all going to use localhost. You will not be able to find any single example typing this ugly IP address. So this is just for convenience. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the ports. I typed 3000. Why did I choose 3000? Why didn't I just type 80? Do you have any idea? I said that the 80 is default port, so why not use that?
It is for browser to go out in internet, and then it won't connect to the local to our own computer. We have to define a port number for own computer. 80 won't work.
That is correct. So let's not go into that detail, but let me say that the ports below 1000 is kind of reserved by the operating system. In that case, we are actually asking operating system to say that, hey, I want to use that port. I want to have control over that port. So give me that port. But the ports below 1000 is mostly assigned to some important jobs, so that it's possible, but it's not really advised to use those ports. So in most of the examples, also you're gonna see 3000. The reason is only by convention. So some guy, maybe a girl, sorry, come up with this 3000 years ago, and people are by convention using 3000. I believe 90% of tutorials around the internet are just using 3000. I think it's first introduced by Ruby on Rails developers, because in Ruby on Rails, if you don't specify anything, the default port is 3000. So I think Node.js people borrowed that tradition from them. So we are continuing on 3000. But I'm gonna show it now how to define it. You can use any port between 1000 and I don't know the upper limit, something 5 digits.
5000.
So you can use anything you like, but I really suggest that you use something like 2000, 3000, 4000 so that it's easier to type.
Don't try using something below 1000. It will just ask for a password or some special access. It's reserved. So there are ways to get around that, but just don't try. Just use 3000.
And one last thing about it, when I type google.com, this is the domain name. But for example, when I clicked on images, there is some extra information after google.com. Well, in this case, I'm redirected to google.de, the German version of Google.
Is there any option to zoom?
I don't know. Can I zoom to address bar? I think not.
No, I don't think so, but there's a command zoom thing in Mac that but you have to enable it through accessibility. Don't worry about it. Just leave
I will.
But it's possible you can zoom a bit.
But the zooming is only for the
Zooming
content,
is for
not
the
the
content.
address bar.
What about if you copy it?
It just zooms in here, but not there.
Yeah, okay. Oh, my screen is back magically.
Okay, great.
No, it doesn't work. Okay. So I think this is bigger.
That's nice.
So google.de was a domain name. So I clicked on images. Then I have something extra here. This IMGHP, something like that. It doesn't matter what it is. It is called path. So in our case, it says that like after my browser knows where google.com is, well, in this case it's google.de, where this google.de is, my computer knows wants to know some extra information. What is it? Now, in this case, we are trying to search for images. So Google servers knows how to serve their homepage, but they obviously know how to serve their image search, right? But they need a hint. So we need to specify which page, which request, which resource we are requesting for. So the way to do it is that we need to provide a path after the domain name. I'm again squeezing some keywords, but we're gonna cover that later. Is that clear? So in my example, I typed localhost 3000. Then if you can remember, there were some other things after localhost 3000. It was I typed /person/all, so that my server knows what to serve. So when you type localhost 3000, it serves something. When you type localhost 3000/person, it serves something else. Is that clear for all? So today in a moment we're gonna create this web server, and we're gonna define those rules so that my server will know what to serve. So back to my empty index file. So from week 1, we were using Node.js actually. Node.js knows and has the capability of a web server. So without using any external libraries, actually we can create a web server using just Node.js. But it's a bit hard, and that's why we need to introduce another library called Express. So Express is a web framework. Is it correct? Yeah. Okay. Express is a framework. Let's say.
Yes.
It makes our lives easier, but I would again emphasize that it is totally possible in Node.js, because actually Express doesn't implement any extra functionality. It just uses the functionality that is already there. So Express is just there to make our life easier.
Just like remember in our Node.js lecture, we wanted to type something in red to the terminal. I'm sure we could have done it before without using any other libraries. We could just have researched what to type, how to code it, and then we could have implemented ourselves. But then we said, why not? Somebody probably did this. Why did we do this? And we just searched in npm repository. We found out there's a library called Choke. We imported it and used it, and then their .red is just made our text red. So that was really easy. Same thing applies here. You can code an HTTP server in Node.js, actually in like 10-15 lines or so, but it just requires a little bit more knowledge. You just have to have more control over things. With the Express, it's just very, very, very simple to just create an Express. So we are using open source in this case to just create an Express.
Is Express part of Node.js?
It's not a part of Node.js.
It's not.
Yeah, it's an open source library that's just like you and me and someone else's code and put it over the internet. It's an open source effort that you can also contribute to. You can read the source code. It's everything is open.
That means we have to install it extra.
Exactly. That was actually my next question, but he already answered kind of. So Express is not part of Node.js. So it's an external library. As you can see in the first line, we are requiring Express here, but this example is not going to work because it's not a part of Node.js. So we have to install it. How do we install it? Exactly. So let's type it today. npm install and Express. Okay, it's covered here, but not here.
You type npm I Express. I is just a shorthand for install. You can just type install instead.
So I type npm install and nothing happened in my index.js. What should happen? I think one file should change. Where was it? Where? So
there's a handle.
Okay, let me open package.json and see what's there. So yes, Chalk was there from the second week. Now we also have Express with the version of 4. So I installed Express.js so that my required here is going to work totally okay.
What happens when we install Express? When we type npm I Express? What happens physically in our computer? Obviously, there is a new line in package.json. Is there something else that is added to our project?
Folder Express?
The folder Express, where was it added to?
Node
modules. Is it only Express, only a folder named Express, or other things? Whatever it depends on get also added. Because like Express is a huge framework that depends on many other projects. So here in our node module, we can see all of the dependencies of it.
So you always get the whole, the entire.
Yeah, you always get the entire. You just type npm install Express, and it came with everything that it depended on. And most probably, the things that it depended on also depended on other things. So it's like a tree of dependencies. And by just typing npm I in Express, we just installed everything.
So when you look at our package.json at the moment, we only have two innocent libraries. One is Chalk and the other is Express. But when you look at the node modules folder, you're going to see a whole another universe here. So we have, I don't know, maybe around 100 other libraries that Express.js depends on.
That is actually the power of open source. Like they also had the same idea. Why do I need to code, I don't know, serve static? Like somebody probably did it for me. I'll just use it and then put something on top of it. So it's really nice. People use each other's code. No, actually, like if you type this whole functionality by yourself, it would still take up space. And
But
instead,
I
somebody.
think it's million times more because it's about
Yeah, but if you had to type all of this, it would still take a million times more space. So it's actually, it doesn't take more space, it's technically easier.
I think it's not about space, it's about time. It's gonna take million years to type that all, you know. Now, as you can see, that I'm hovering over this folder, you can imagine that we are now using thousands of people's work here. So some people out there type all these functionalities for us so that in 5 lines, in 7 lines here, we can create a web server. So it looks so simple here. In 5 lines, we could create a web server, but we are actually using thousands of people's worth of effort here. And that is the let's say, power of open source. So we defined our web server here. I will go over line by line. So in the first line, we are requiring Express, and we already talked about it. In order to be able to use it, we first installed it, and you would see all the Express folders in your node modules. In the second line, well, we required it, but we didn't do anything with Express. So in the second line, we are creating an Express instance, and we are assigning that Express to our app. So this one is nothing special, but it's again, by convention, we are kind of always using app variable here. So it is our web application. It's short for app, application.
You could type anything, it's just a convention.
So after doing that, actually the magic happens in these 3 lines. App.listen 3000. So it's no coincidence that I typed localhost 3000. At this line, I'm telling Express to listen to 3000. But actually, it's not responsible to Express because Express has no control over my computer. My computer controls all the port. So at this line, I'm telling Express, could you please ask for a permission for this 3000 port, because I don't have control over these ports. My operating system has control, and I want Express to take control over this port so that I can use it. So again, we have one thing here. What's that? The thing that we were talking about half an hour in the beginning of this lecture. What's that? Callback function. Yes. So why do we need a callback function here? Okay, this time I'm gonna give the answer because this is an asynchronous operation, right? As Mert already emphasized, we don't have control over this port. So Express needs to communicate with operating system, ask for required permissions and stuff. And then when it is done, when the permissions are granted, then we would know that, okay, I have the permission so that I can do some kind of operations, but in this case, we are just printing it to the console. So we are saying, listen to port 3000, and whenever you're done, print this. Let me just run it. So I'm seeing a server listening here. Does that mean that my Express listening thing was successful? Yeah, sure, because then it means that this callback is executed. So I can make sure that this app.listen function executed successfully. So I type this node-mon. You can type node index, it doesn't matter. So I will go again, my 3000.
Do you know what node-mon is used for? Did you cover it in the previous lectures? It just listens to the file changes, and if something is changed, it just restarts it. It's just a convenient thing. You could just type node index over and over, or just type node-mon, and whenever you change something, it just restarts itself automatically.
Okay, so I type localhost 3000, and this is what I get. Has anybody seen this screen? By the way, I'm not talking about any other screen, like, let's say, for example, if we type 3001, I'm not talking about this screen. This screen is different. It means that there is nothing to serve. There is no servers listening to that port. I'm talking about this one. You should be able to see cannot get slash.
Okay, this is important. Please follow this. If you cannot see this cannot get slash, please raise your hand and ask for help. We have assistance.
What's the last comment we could run?
It was node-mon index.js or just node index.js.
I just typed node-mon index, but you could type node index. It's the same thing.
The
So
code is in the repository. You can just pull it, take it, and just run it. You should be able to see this. Cannot get slashed.
Alright, shall we start? So, is everybody here? I see some missing chairs, but I'm not sure if they left or.
Yes, some people left, unfortunately.
Anyway, well, I hope the rest of you guys like me. Anyway. So, where were we? We were saying that we create a web server, but although our web server listens to this 3000 port, it doesn't serve anything because we didn't say to do so, right? What we have done is we just said listen to this port, and that's it. So our web server at the moment doesn't know how to respond to requests. So let's create our first rule. Like I'm saying rule now, but eventually they are called endpoints. So let's create our first endpoint. So in order to be able to do that, I need to again interact with our Express framework, right? So our Express framework is called app here. So after app, I need to define something so that my server will know how to respond to requests. What do I type? Does anyone know? Any ideas? But you don't need to know, but I'm just curious. So the first thing that I need to define is here get. So this so this is app.get, but it's not that simple. So we need to call this get function properly. So you can also cheat by hovering on it. So the first parameter that it needs a name. Name is the name of the path. Remember, I talked about path. Path is the part that comes after the domain. So in our example, it was whatever comes after google.de. So here in our example, it is slash. It is the root path. So whenever you type localhost 3000, the root path, the slash path is called. So the first thing we need to do is define how to respond to localhost 3000 request. So the first parameter is the name of the root. So in our case, it's slash. And the second parameter is your favorite thing is it's callback function. So it means that now I'm defining a get rule here, saying that whenever you see this name, this path here, reply with this callback function. Well, execute this callback function and reply with that. So this is an empty file definition. We will just fill it in. This has a special function. This has parameters named rec and res. Again, you can name these parameters any way you like, but for convention, again, we are using this rec and res. They are shorter request and response. So in this callback function, whenever you inspect this rec variable, you're going to see some attributes about the current request. And whenever you inspect this res variable, you're going to see some attributes, some functions that is related to the response. So I need to return a response here. So which one of these variables I should interact with? Response, right? So I'm saying res, and again, there is a special function for this response object. It's called send. And I need to return a response. In our case, let's say again, hello. Okay? So I created a rule here. It says that whenever you see this path, slash path, execute this callback function and return hello. All right. Yep. I didn't say in return here. If you okay. Well, we are returning from our server to the browser. So we are starting this request from our browser. So whenever I type localhost 3000, it is starting a request. That request reaches our server, and our server returns that response to the browser again.
Let's replace it with sending something back. We are just sending hello back. It's not the type return. You can write it out, but this is the only thing in the function. So it will just, no one is expecting anything as a result of this function. So you can either type return or not. You can type return.
So, yep.
That means whatever we're going to write after send in the brackets, that's going to be shown in browser.
Yeah.
That's what I'm expecting. Let's try. So previously, whenever I type localhost 3000, this is what I got. Let's try what happens now. Now I see hello here. So what happened is that I type localhost 3000 again. That request started from our browser, my Chrome here. It reached my web server. My web server knew how to respond to that request. In that case, what was that? Actually, it was localhost 3000 and slash. But again, slash is the root. It's kind of the default path when you don't type anything. I think it's also discarded when you type slash. So my server knew how to respond to that request now, and it responded with hello. Okay, was that clear? So I defined the rule here, but it is only valid for the root path, right? It's only valid for slash path. So do you think it's gonna work if I type slash that person? So we now have the same error again. So whenever you see this error, and I believe you're gonna see this error a lot while doing your homeworks, it means that your web server is okay, it is up and running, but it just doesn't know how to respond to that specific request. So you don't confuse this error with that one. This means your web server is crashed and there is no one listening to that port. Okay? This error and this one is different. This one is your web server is okay, but it just doesn't know how to respond. Is everything clear so far? Sorry?
Saying that you cannot get the person.
Yeah, because we only implemented this slash root. My web server at the moment only knows how to respond to that specific path, and anything other than slash, it just doesn't know. Yeah,
yes,
we're gonna define it. So okay, next thing to do is that as you can see, this is like I'm saying that we create the web server, but all it can do is returning a hello, and as you can see, it is pretty ugly hello. It doesn't have any images, it doesn't have anything, like it just has hello. But for example here, this is like regular website, it has a lot of things here. It has some colorful buttons, some links, some graphs, some search boxes, some inputs, some buttons, like it has everything. So how do we do that? So I need to return something from my web server so that the browser would draw something nice to the user, right? At the moment, my capability is only returning hello. So I should return something instead of just hello text. I should return something so that the browser could draw something nice to the screen. What could it be? Exactly. So I would need to return some HTML from my web server so that browsers can understand to draw nice things to the screen. Is that clear? Okay.
HTML is just a, it's short for hypertext markup language. It's just a form. It's a way of typing things in a structured way, so that this has this color, this has this size, this has this font, this has this images here. It's a structured way of writing things, and it's a standard for websites. So instead of returning just the text, just a hello, we would just wrap it with what Ömer will show now. It's a structured way of telling the browser how to do things.
So this ugly thing that you see on the screen is the HTML. I think this is one of the simplest HTML structures that you can construct, I believe. And if you don't understand anything yet, that's okay. There are some tags, there are some script tags or style tags that you may not familiar with, but that's okay. But that just so you know that this is how HTML looks like. So for users, for us, it looks pretty ugly. It's pretty complicated. Like it looks like a structured way of doing, but it doesn't mean anything to us. But for browsers, they can actually understand this one and they can do something beautiful with it. Like for example, here we are saying that instead of this ugly hello text, we are defining a style here so that our hello tag will be nicer. It's gonna use a font that I don't know. I think it's default Apple font. So instead of using hello here, our task is now simple, right? Instead of returning this string hello, I should return the HTML file. But how?
But don't try to get into details of HTML every line. It's just not important. It's not in the context of this course. We will have a front-end lecture in the future. It's not important. It's just what you need to know is just there's a way of writing things, telling browser to do beautiful things with your text, like having different fonts, having different colors. It's just a way of telling the browser how to do things. Just don't get that lost in the specifics of what is on the screen here.
So the thing that we need to focus on is we were returning a simple string here named hello. Instead of this string, I want to return a whole file. That's the whole point. So I have already created this simple index.html for you. I think it exists in your branches. So it is the same file. But as Mer said, don't be confused by any detail here. It's just an HTML, and we're gonna serve it right now. The important thing is how we serve it. So because I type quite slowly, I will shamelessly copy paste what I wrote before. Oh. So this is the way to do it. As you can see, it has again a special function. We were using rest.send and we were passing our string to that send function. But in order to be able to return files, we need another function. It's called sendFile. Again, this function is written by some other nice people out there, and we are just returning here so that we don't have to read this file from our file structure and do some promises. Whenever you're done reading with that file, just parse it and return it again. So I'm trying to emphasize that how much trouble those nice people saved us here, right? So there are some nice people out there so that we don't have to write those asynchronous file reading functions here. So instead of typing all these functions, we are just typing send file and it's magically done in the background.
Make sure that if you just read the source code of Express, you will definitely see that somewhere there is an fs read file. Definitely. Someone is doing that for us. We could have done it, but we would have just done a lot of other things just other than reading the file. This nice person just does that for us, returns promises or whatever, and we just use it.
So send file is part of FS.
Send file is part of Express. We are using Express here. Send file is part of res. Res is part of app. App is basically Express.
So in the first minutes of the lecture, we were talking about this dir name. We saw it again here, but remember we were using backticks in the service. Now we are not using backticks. We are using old good string concatenation. They are basically the same. Don't be confused by it. We are trying to basically reach our file. So I'm saying that whatever your current directory is, just find it, and under it you will find an index.html and find it and serve it. That's what I'm trying to say here. Where is my terminal?
make the screen dark again.
So, yes, please.
I have a question. Can you please go back to your code? Is it possible to make a new const and require this file and then use this const to, when we want to use?
Sure, of course. You can just cut it here and
But it's just a name. If you want to read the whole file, then you wouldn't be able to use the send file because it requires a file name, not the whole file. There's another function for that you just type the file. Like, there are a lot of helpful functions of Express. Here it just like expects a file name, not the whole file.
Okay.
But there are ways to do that. Okay. Any questions? Can I help you? No? Okay, then I will continue a bit. So we returned this HTML file. I think you all see the difference here. So we are now using a beautiful font, and it's much nicer just returning a simple hello text. And also, it's a bit detailed, but you can see the HTML here. Like before, we were just returning a simple string, but now you can see the HTML here, and you can see how our browser understood that HTML and draw some nice text. Well, in that case, we are having a simple text here, but we could easily implement a button, we could easily implement an image, we could easily implement a link, just using HTML. Is that clear? Okay, so enough for static content right now. Let's do something interesting. Like up until now, we were always returning some hello, but I want to display the current number of people in our database, right? It's a more interesting challenge. How do I do that? So instead of displaying this static content, hello, because no matter what I have in my database, whenever I type localhost 3000, I'm gonna get hello, and it's kind of boring. So, like, okay, this is static content. I want to have a dynamic content. I want a content that changes depending on the data that I have. Okay, sure.
You need to call your HTML file, right? or just displaying it on the page.
Well, I will need HTML, but I'm asking. So this is a static content. Instead of this hello, for example, I want to display the number of people. How do I do that?
Okay. So you need to put a variable to that HTML file.
That is the idea, but actually you cannot put variables inside HTML. So
yeah.
That's what are we gonna do?
Another library then, or
as always.
As always. A variable into a HTML.
That's a good idea. So
I know the EGS or something, or some line of SQL line.
So this is what we are going to do. We are going to replace HTML with something else that we can actually play, and we can put some dynamic content in it.
Exactly, it's like an EGS. You can use something else, but it's just.
But before that, let's try to reach our database, right? I said that I want to display the number of people in my database, but I don't know if I can reach it, right? I did it in the previous weeks, but I want to make sure that my web servers can reach that content, and actually we can put it, we can display it in our Chrome browser. We have done it in our Node.js. So whenever we type node.index.js, we were able to see how many people we had, but we didn't do it in our browsers yet. So let's implement another rule here. Maybe I will just again, yeah, copy. Oh. So I already have this root path. let me call this path person.all. So I want a route, I want a path that whenever I type localhost 3000 and person/all, I want to be able to see the number of people I have in my database. So it's a dynamic content. How do I do that? Do you remember how we get all the people in our database? Yeah. Exactly. So we exported that findAll function. So we want to use that findAll function, and findAll will return all the people in my database so that I can make use of them. So I can take the count, I can list them, I can do whatever I want. So it was in our service. I want to make use of our servers. This service was the person service. So I'm in index.js at the moment, but I need a function from person service.js from another file. How can I reach that functions?
With dot.
Sorry?
With dot.
With dot. We don't have that.
But we have no reference to that file yet. So our index.js does nothing about this person service.js. So it knows nothing. Exactly. So again, I required my service now. So at least my index.js knows what person service is. But it's not enough. I want to use a findAll function from that person service. How do I do that? That's your answer, that findAll. Actually, if I hover this person service, you can see that what I can access from that service. So I hover it. As you can see, my IDE is smart enough that it gives me that result. So the functions that available to me is a findAll, find, add, and delete. So I can easily type person service.findAll, and that hopefully gives me all the people. All right, this is my person/all path. I'm coming here. I'm saying person service and find all, and I'm calling that function.
I have to emphasize that you already have the final version. Don't spend time in typing everything you see on the screen. You just already have it in the index.js file. Please just try to follow the lecture, or if you find the time, you can just copy from the other file. Just don't type it.
So I know that you already have the files, but do you think it's gonna work? Why not? Well, findAll returns an output, right? No?
You have to pass something. You have to pass something inside this.
No, you don't need anything. It's just you just want everything, so you don't need to.
findAll doesn't expect any parameters. Okay, then let's try. Let's try and see. So, okay, my what? Okay. So this is our result. Why do you think we have an empty JSON here? I know that we have some people in our database. So it looks like our function returned something, but it returned an empty thing.
Must be converted now to the screen.
Who? You?
Which is outputting what the return of the function is for
Not exactly. So let me give you the answer then. Actual answer is here, but is it available? Yes. Okay, yeah. As you can see, findAll returns us a promise, and rest.send, we are actually sending browser back a promise, and browser doesn't know what to do with promises. And also at the time we are returning it, the promise doesn't have a value yet, right? You know, remember, promise, when we call it, it doesn't have a value at that moment, but it's gonna have a value in the future. So, is it all clear? No. All right.
Yeah, we have to wait. There's a really good sentence there, right?
Exactly. How do we wait? Await. So if I just type await, is it gonna solve all my problems? No? Well, we need one more thing here. So remember, when we were using an await inside the function, that function should be defined as async, right? So that's a bit a detail, but I need to put an async keyword here so that while we are defining that function, Node.js will understand that it does some asynchronous operation. So let me save it and refresh my page again. So we are seeing some output directly from our database. And the thing that you said earlier is now correct. We are seeing some ugly output because it is read directly from our database and we didn't use any HTML. So it is totally normal that we are seeing this ugly output because we are not using any HTML. So we learned how to read HTMLs and we just learned how to return a dynamic content. So let's combine these two things together and let's get a good list of people, but also let's make it a bit nice looking. All right. So he said that we need to put variables inside HTML, but unfortunately that is not totally possible. There are some, let's say, extension of HTML that you can put variables inside it. In that case, we are going to use something called pug files. Not the dog, but I think it's also cute. So this is, let me give you how a pug file looks like. So it's not that different from the HTML we had. It's a bit less verbose, so we have less stuff here, but it's not that different. Or what do you think? Is it different? Much different. Okay, so pug file is kind of an extension to the HTML. We are gonna use these pug files, and eventually we are gonna say our Express framework web server to say that we are not using HTML anymore. We are using pug files, so behave accordingly, so that our web servers will generate HTML files out of these pug files. But why do we do that? Because in the case of HTML, we were just reading the HTML and returning to browser, and it was okay. Why can't we return just pug files to browser? Exactly. The browsers are smart and stupid in the same way. They can do pretty smart things, but they are stupid in the sense that they can only understand HTML in terms of drawing stuff into the screen. So although we are using pug files here, in the end, we need to return HTML to our browsers so that they can draw nice things to the screen. Okay? So I will a bit talk about more about pugs. Why are we using that? So this HTML head, title, script style, blah, blah, blah. These things that we were already seeing in this HTML file, right? HTML head, title, script. So they are kind of similar. But the thing that is quite different is this one, block content. So we don't have anything like this in our HTMLs. That's where the magic happens. So there are some special keywords in pug saying that, okay, I'm using a variable. This is not a static content anymore. So whenever you see this keyword, replace it whatever the rule you have. So here we are saying that we are defining a block named content. At this point, let me introduce our index.pug. So here index.pug says that it extends layout. So this layout is not a keyword. It says that whatever layout pug has, just extend it. So you see the magic here? So we can have 100 files here, and instead of repeating all this head, title, script, and all these tags here, we can just type extends layout, and they are gonna be injected into HTML. So we don't have to write these things again and again. So we can actually modularize our structure. That's one advantage of PAG files. But in this context, actually, what we need is dynamic content.
Yeah, just an example, like most of the websites have a header and a footer. Like whenever you click, it always has the same header, it always has the same footer, same menu bars and whatever. This, like, we could have typed that header and footer in every web page, or just use something like this, that all of the pages have this header and footer, and the content will change on it. So the same thing here in, let's say, Facebook, they have something like this, and that extends the main layout, which has the header and footer only a single time, and whenever they need to change it, they change it in a single way.
So this is template.
Just like a template. This is basically called a template. This is what we're doing is template.
So the path is kind of
Pug is a template engine. It's basically it's a template.
So we are back in our index.js. I said that Express is quite powerful and it can already parse HTML stuff, but it cannot parse Pug yet. So we need some extra library. So again, there are some nice people out there. They already wrote it for us. So we need a way to tell Express to say that instead of rendering HTML, I want you to render Pug files. It means that whenever you see Pug files, put them together. Like, remember those extends and blog and content, put them together. And if you see any variables, also evaluate them and put this dynamic content. And eventually, it's gonna render an HTML to the browser. That's what we're gonna do. So how do I do that again? As always, if I need an external library, what do? Install it, yes. Okay, here I create a new one and npm install Pug. So I installed it. Am I done? What do I need to do? Yeah, exactly. So I installed it, but installing means I just actually downloaded the Pug library to my node modules folder, right? My web application doesn't know anything about Pug yet. So after I created my Express app, I need to tell my Express framework to use Pug views instead of HTML views. This is done by this magical command. So I'm saying that our view engine is now Pug instead of what? Before it was HTML. So the default is HTML. If we don't set this one, the view engine, the thing that our Express can understand and return to front end, return to our browser, was HTML. But at this line, we are saying that instead of using HTML, no more HTML, use Pug files instead. So here, as you can see, I was first sending a simple hello, then I was sending a file. Now I introduce view engine Pug, so I need another function. It's called render, and this again takes a parameter called name, and let's say index. So this magical function says that I want to render a view named index. Because I already set the view engine Pug, Express will now look for a file named index.pug and it's going to render it.
Render is a fancy word for drawing.
Yeah, I'm trying to use the same keywords as in Express because whenever I try to render, I use this render function here. Okay, so I defined this one. So let's see what's gonna happen when we call this slash path. So okay, the number of people we have is blank. Why it's blank? Because I didn't put anything. So I need something magical here so that I can print the number of people we have. So up until this line, all I have is static content. This is the part that I need a dynamic content. It needs to be generated on the fly, and it's gonna depend on the number of people I have in my database. So this is where magic happens. I said that this render function takes one parameter, but it's actually not true. Well, the first parameter is the required one. The others are optional. Optional second parameter is that if you want dynamic content inside pack file, then you need to pass it while rendering it, so that while rendering index.pack, it will know what to render. So second parameter is an object, and let's assume that I will pass all the people here, right? But I'm forgetting something here, right? Because, well, people I defined here. Well, I didn't define at all. So let's just fetch the people from the database. And return it. Well, I said that this is the dynamic part. This is the part that we pass variables to pack templates, but I didn't change anything here. So the passing the parameters to pack template was done, okay, but I need a way to also access them here. So there is again a special syntax here. As you can see, my IDE already changed color for that. I'm not sure if you can differentiate there. Yeah, I think it's visible. So up until that moment, the color was white. It means that static content. Whenever I type this hashtag and this curly brackets, it turned into yellow. So whenever I type something inside that bracket, it means that Pack will treat as dynamic content. So in this case, variables. So it's no magic again. It only knows whatever I pass it to it. So in this case, I'm only passing people. So here, the only variable I have access to is what? People, right? So I just type here, and I'm hoping that it's gonna work here. So let me refresh it. All right, it crashed. All right, you see the error here. I think I forget it, and you're gonna forget it a lot while doing the homeworks. I'm using an await inside a not async function.
The error just tells you very explicitly what you want. Oh, there is a hand.
Sure.
This one or the one that in the JavaScript file, in the index.js?
I think you have a bad luck there. It's not visible. Maybe I can shorten. All right. Yeah.
Go back to the index.
This one.
Yeah, she's asking about the object passing. This one.
All right. So I said that this render is again a special function, and the first parameter is name of the template. That's for sure. And the second parameter is the variable that we need to access inside pack templates. So whatever I pass here, I can access them inside pack templates. So this is again no magic. For example, let's say I want to access this test variable and want this thing. So
before that, I guess there's also another thing. This is an object. The curly brackets define objects in JavaScript. So it's not separate variable, but it's a single object that has a lot of different features. Just like a person, meetup, or whatever, it has different things in it, attributes. Yeah, the curly bracket is just means that it's an object. It's a JavaScript object, and whatever you put in it will be accessible from the file. So it's a single variable, it's a single thing, it's inside the curly bracket. But whatever you put inside side will be accessible.
In the
So
where?
if you in the view in the pug file. So if you remember from the first lecture, actually, JavaScript has like strings, numbers, things, but object is also another thing, another important essential type in JavaScript. It's not denoted by curly brackets, and whatever you put inside is just attributes, and then you can talk about it.
And also, if it is more clear, it is a regular JavaScript object. So I'm creating an object here named data, and it has two attributes inside. One is people and the other is test. I'm just passing that object. It's a regular JavaScript object and nothing more. Whatever you pass to that rendering function, it is available inside Pug. Is there any other questions about it? Yeah, it has to be. Yeah.
It's just the definition of that one. That just if you read the document, it just says that I expect a name parameter, and the second parameter should be an object that has everything in it. So that is the definition.
Any more questions? Okay. So this is the first content that this is the first screen that we see with a dynamic content. So this tool is generated on the fly. So before rendering this HTML, my web server actually fetched all the Pug files and combined them together. And whenever it saw a variable, it replaced it with the dynamic content. And in order to do that, it first accessed my database and evaluated all the people there. And eventually, we just rendered the number of people here. Well, we could easily list the people here, but it doesn't matter. So you have the variable here. You can do whatever you like. Actually, let's try to render all the people's name here, because just the name is boring, right? So how do I do that? Let me create a paragraph here. And because it's a dynamic content, I need hashtag and curly brackets. So
don't get lost in the specifics. This H1 means the header. It's a larger text in HTML, and P means just a paragraph. It just doesn't matter the specifics. Just bear with us.
Okay, so I want to write the first name of the first people here. How do I do that? Yeah. People 0 and name. The first one is Mert. Well, I want to also write other things, so I have to write this one, right? Well, for 2 people it's kind of okay, but let's assume that I have 100 people, or let's assume that I don't know the number of my users. So I need a smarter way here, right? I need a kind of loop so that I will only type once, but whenever I have more users, so I don't have to edit this Pug file. So I'm not sure if the syntax is correct, but let me try. So yeah, okay. Did I refresh or write? So instead of typing all the names one by one, instead of creating a new paragraph for each person I have in my database, I created this kind of for loop, just in JavaScript, and it magically created a paragraph for each person in my database. So from now on, I don't have to deal with all this tagging stuff. So whenever I create a new person, this list is magically going to update. Is that clear? So Pug has a lot of other functionalities, but for now I think it's enough because I have some other contents to cover. And the important thing is that it is different than HTML in the sense that you can actually put dynamic content in it, and it has some nice functionality like loops or like people.lang is a valid JavaScript expression. You can do a bunch of stuff there.
Just to make it clear, this each is not part of JavaScript. It's part of Pug engine. It's a functionality that is provided by Pug only. It just reads well each person in people. It just in the end, basically what the rendering engine in the background it just turns it into a loop in its head and then goes over each item in the list and then creates this text. Like it's just a shorter way to write a for loop or a loop in general. But it's not JavaScript, it's Pug. But again, don't get lost in the specifics. We're just listing everything that we have in the database.
Okay, let's move forward. So I implement the, sorry? Here. So what we implement is the endpoint, the rule that lists all the people. But most of the time, I only need one user, right? Let's say we are going to implement a profile page. So in that case, I need to be able to get the information of one single person. Let's do that. So you already know how to define a rule here. How do I do that? Well, it's just there. So app.get. And the first parameter is the name of the root, and the rest is a callback function. But instead of using find all, I want to use find, right? So for that case, let's assume that we are returning details of the first user, right? Then the thing that I need to do is find, and I will pass the parameter 1. Is it gonna work? Do you see any errors? Let's find out. So person and 1. So I'm seeing the details of Mert. I hope they are correct. Okay, good. So for example, if I need to implement a profile page for Mert, I'm done. But am I done really? For example, I also want to be able to see the profile page for other people, right? So this doesn't work. Why it doesn't work? Well,
because you wrote a find 1.
Actually, so that is true. What do I do now? Well, I can copy this one, right? I can do 2 here, 2 here, and you already started laughing because this is stupid, right? We don't need to do that. Like, I mean, Pug is even smarter than that. Even Pug has a loop inside it so that we don't have to repeat ourselves. So here we need again variable. We need a way to read this part, because this part is the changing part, right? Person/1, person/2. So person/ is this, it's fixed, but the number, the ID coming after that slash is the dynamic part. So we need a way to define a rule saying that this part is fixed, but treat the second part as a variable. So you can actually find out just by a Google search, but the way to do is that this. So whenever you type person/ some number there, because of this special syntax, Express framework will treat as a variable. So from now on, whenever I type person/ something, this rule will be executed, because it says that, okay, person/ matches my rule. So the next is just variable. So I'm gonna just execute that rule. So that part is okay, but I still have 1 here. So whenever, like, I saved it right now, so whatever I pass here, it is going to return me the details of Mert, right? Because 1 is still here. Well, I'm refreshing 2 and I'm putting 35 again. So no matter what I type here, it's gonna return me the details of Mert. So I need a way to use this ID here. Again, there is a way to access that one. It is, of course, as you might guess, in the request, because it is part of the request, right? Whenever I'm typing localhost person/ that ID, the request start from my browser, so it's part of the request, and it is a parameter, so you can access those things using this params attribute, and whatever you type here, it's going to be here. So this ID and this ID here is no special keyword. I could just type anything here, but you need to access it in the same way after this rect.params. That's it. So let's try it out.
This is very important. Yeah, you
Sure.
understand that Express does some things under the hood, and here by saying that putting this column here, we just tell it that this is a variable that will follow, right? And then it has to put it somewhere so that we can access. We cannot just access it by typing ID because it's not defined in that space. It has to put it somewhere, and in this case, Express developers, the nice people, decided to put it in an object called params. It's just their way of doing it. It's just the choice of wording is just chosen by the developers of Express. So everything that you pass onto the rule here is going to be accessible inside the params object.
So that means we can have the variable ID in the line 22. It can be anything, but in line 23, it has to be
the same thing.
Request, params, and the same variable.
Just type anything, and then
So this should work.
But request and params has to be
request params are fixed, so it's part of Express. What is inside the params changes, whatever you do.
Why is not in the curly bracket?
Like this is an object, and you access objects with that. If you remember, like the person.name, person is an object. When you're defining it, you use the curlies, but when you're accessing things inside, it's just it.
I didn't realize that we
If you check the code for Express, you would see that they define it in a curly brackets and then assign it to the params. But we are still only using it.
Is that clear? Because you're gonna need this functionality in your homeworks. Yep. Yeah. Well, when you type this one, person/anything, then as long as you don't type person/anything, you will not be able to execute that rule. When you don't type it, it's static, it's fixed. So, like now, we have to type person/anything.
Show it on the browser. Now the column is removed. Anything is only there, it's fixed.
So I'm typing person
/1, it will say that you won't do it. But you have to type like literally anything.
I typed anything. But,
exactly. Yeah, it just switches that, transforms it into a variable.
Okay. So let me leave it like anything. All right.
No, it works for everything. Like in this case, we have anything. We could have another slash and then another variable. Another slash, another variable.
So
go. You could have person/column name /friends column ID /something. They would all be converted back to variables. If they have a column before them, it would be accessible inside the variable. Name would have to be part of the person. No, it's just a way to access this. Like this is just we're just going to use it in any way we like. It's just a variable. Sure. We are not in the view yet. We just get the person. If you see, it's just a JSON object. It's ugly. Now Ömer will tell you how to put it into a beautiful view that where you use the curlies and the hashtags to use the person's name and stuff. So this is just a database. We're just sending the JSON, the raw data, and now we're just going to turn it into a beautiful thing that can be seen on the screen. Probably we'll just tell that.
Yeah.
And you wrote also something. That means anything and something. There are then two variables, not just one.
Yeah, of course, you can chain them however you like.
It's a different variable. You will access it direct params dot something. Both of them will be available.
And then in the line 23, then we have to, if we add in line 22,
yeah,
something
like this,
and then how we get in
it's
line
rect.params dot something.
Dot something and dot if we want to have access to it. So if we want
They are all available in params.
There are two different things. One of them is rect params anything, the other one is rect params something. There are two different variables.
Then we have to write another line for something.
Yes, another line that has the rect params something. If you want to use it. But in this case we don't need, we just need an ID. We don't have anything else. So just let's do it only a single ID. No, we just only need one. In the future we may need multiple ones.
Could we access also this something, writing in parentheses rect dot parameters dot anything dot something?
No, anything doesn't have something. Something is in the same level as anything. They're just the same.
Right. Well, if you want to reach it, it should be inside this params object. So it doesn't matter which order you have them here. They are all available inside params.
So when there is no slash, it means that
Like,
There needs to be a slash.
the same level.
Whatever you type with column there, they're all in the same level. There's no hierarchy. They're just different variables.
so they are not ordered in that sense. So it doesn't mean that anything comes before something. Maybe I should have picked some other words, but anyway, it doesn't mean anything comes
They're
before
just two
something.
different variables. They're just one comes after the other. If you type in the URL in the browser person/1/2, then anything would be one, something would be two.
Okay. Good one. So, since name is not my person, I could actually do recognize name and then just put the column and then it will come for each person person/man or person/line.
Yeah, whatever you type in the browser, in the address bar, it will be replaced with this anything. So you could access it with direct params anything. It would be Mert if you type Mert, it will be Ömer if you type Ömer. And you will reuse it however you like. It doesn't have to be person. You can do anything. It's just a variable. Just like any JavaScript variable, you can use it anywhere you want. In this case, you would like to use it as an ID to pass to find function. It could be anything. It's just any variable. It doesn't get used anywhere at all.
We have to type something into there. So can I just do slash, column, or does there have to be some other character involved?
You only need slashes in between. And then you can add as many variables as you want.
But I don't have to type.
You have to give variable a name, ID, something, anything, variable 1, variable 2. It has to have a name so that you can access it from the parts.
I think maybe she's confused with the interrogation mark, with the question mark.
Okay, I guess
But that is
we won't be needing the second variables. It's just currently advanced. Now let's just keep on using a single variable, and then we can talk after the class or in the chat. Because we have limited time. We want to cover some subjects, alright?
Alright, so the next thing that I'm going to cover is how to create people. Well, not in the sense like we are creating people, but okay, that was an ugly joke. But so up until now, all we have done is getting information, right? I'm again using some keywords from this HTTP. So our browser was getting some information from our web server, but in that case, I want to create a user using my browser. So you may think of it as a Facebook register or sign up process. So when you go to facebook.com, you're creating a user in Facebook's databases while using your own browser, right? So we need to be able to do something about it. So it's obviously it's not possible using this get keyword, because get is only for what? Getting information. So we need to find a way to send information from our browser to our web server. So the keyword for that is, I'm not gonna go harsh on you, so I'll just tell the answer. The keyword for that is post. So get is for getting information and post is sending information. So we are posting the information from our browser to web server. So as you might guess, the nice people out there who wrote Express, they were also nice to name it the same way as the HTTP word. So the keyword is here, post. Again, it looks similar to our get. The first parameter is the name, and the second one is the callback. Oh. So I'm kind of done with defining the rule. So whenever I make a post request to this URL /person, this rule will be executed. But how? So in previous example, we saw that getting some kind of information like ID is done via this special syntax. But how do I do it with this post request? So in order to be able to create a person, I need to have name, surname, age, or ID, or some other information. But our database is quite simple. We only have name and ID, age, I guess. But let's assume that you're creating an account on Facebook. You need to have a lot of things, right? Facebook needs to know what you like, what your profile picture is, what your cover photo is, what your, I don't know, status is. So there are a lot of information. So it's not really possible to pass all this information using these URL parameters, right? So we need a different way. And also, let's assume that you're registering, and the another information you need is your email and your password. So in order to be able to do that, you need to type your password inside URL. Have you ever done it? I think not, right? So obviously we are not using that method. We are using something else so that your password and your email does not go into that URL. But always you see that person/1 or person/ some kind of ID, but you never get to see person/ and their password there. So the way to do is post requests. Post requests are different from get requests in a way that the data is sent in a different way. They have a different, let's say, storage to carry this data from browser to our web server. In this example, I will just say that that data is carried along in the body of that request. So body is the keyword here because I will just use it here. So let me just console whatever we have. So it is obviously a part of request. So I will just type request and body. So in an ideal world, if I post a request in that URL, I need to be able to see whatever that request has. Okay, let's do that. Can I do it in the address bar of browser? So the answer is no, because whenever you type something in the address bar, it by default generates a GET request. It means that whenever I type localhost 3000, it is making a GET request to that specific path. So in order to be able to do a post request, we need something else. Well, for the upcoming things, when we introduced a front-end framework, you're gonna see a lot different ways. But for now, we are gonna use a library called Axios. Again, don't go into details of that, and I already cheated and edited here. As you can see in layout pack, we have this Axios package already included in our template. So our front end, right now, Google Chrome browser knows what Axios is, but I would say that it's a third-party library, and we have to include it.
It's just another nice set of people decided to write a library for us to easily make post requests and other kinds of requests. You can do it without Axios, but it would just take more time and more noise. Axios is just an easy way to make post requests. Don't get into the specifics. We just included it and we're just going to use it.
Okay, now in my browser console, Axios is readily available to me. And again, I would say that this is just details of Axios, but the way to make a post request is quite simple. Like you type just axios.post, and the first parameter is quite similar what we have in our Express, is the name of the path. So in this case, it's /person. The second parameter is the object. So this is what I'm talking about. This object is carried with the body of this request. Okay, so it is not in the URL. So you will not be able to see person /h or name or whatever. So in the request, we are gonna only see /person, but this data is transmitted in a different way, in a different place. Axios is not defined. Nice, because I'm stuck in person anything. So Axios is here. So I just made a post request to my server. What do I have here? Remember, I just typed console log rec.body, right? But as you can see, we have a problem here. It just printed out undefined. So there are some, again, complicated ways of parsing these parameters, but I'm going to now introduce another third-party library, but I'm saying that this is not really important. This is just implementation details, and once you're done it, it's gonna be there and it's gonna be available to you. The third-party library that I'm going to introduce now is called body parser. And as you might already guess, we have to install it, npm install body parser. And while it is installing, I will again shamelessly copy.
We're trying to make sure that our web server understands post requests. Like whenever you post something with the body, it just currently doesn't understand. There are ways to make it understand. So this is one way of making it understand by installing another nice person's library called body parser. It will just parse the body. That means that read the body and then make it available in the rec.
So I just pasted 2 lines of code here. The first one you already know, we don't need to talk about it. I just required it here, and it's available to me as body parser. And here, it's again implementation details of body parser. I'm saying that whatever comes along with that post request, just make it available to me as a JSON, and that's it. And I'm saying that you don't have to use it a lot. Once it is there, it's gonna be there forever. So just bear along with me. So I saved it, and let me make this post request again. So here, instead of undefined, I'm seeing the data that I have passed in the post request, right? Okay, so perfect. I now have enough information to create a new person and put it in database. Let's do that. And how do I do that? Remember, we had person service. What is the function? Add, right? I'm adding. And in this body, I already have enough information to be able to create a person. But as you already know, we looked into it, this add returns a promise. So in order to be able to make sure that this function is executed before I return anything, I wait for that, right? And also, let's return the result of this new user.
You don't have to, you can just say, okay,
yeah,
that's done.
Well, yeah, you can just say done here. But the thing is that on this line 32, because I've just put await here, on line 32, I'm certain that my user is inserted into database. It's gonna be there. Let's do it. So I'm already seeing myself here. So this is my new user with an ID. Remember that I didn't pass any IDs and it was already calculated because I had 2 people and my ID is now 3. I'm refreshing my page. Well, it's there. Is it clear? Body parser. It's this one. Body dash parser, sorry.
Don't worry about it. It's just a library that we need to understand what the post is. So do you see what we did here? We just posted something to the website, to our server, with the details of a user that we would like to create. That's not there, but we would like to create. It's a new user. We just provided with a name and an age, which is, if you go to the service, the person service, you would see that add function requires a name and an age to be able to create a person. If you don't provide it with it, then it won't understand how to create a person. And here in this post request, we posted an object, regular JavaScript object with a name and age in it, through the post request. And on our website, web server side, we received that post request and then passed it to add function of the person service, which already knows how to create a person. We covered it in the previous lecture. Right? It just, we provided with an object. It has a new person class. We had a person class. It just had a constructor where you put the data in and it would just create a new person. And then it would save it to the database. In this case, it's a person.json or something. It's a JSON file that's already on your hard drive. So we created something that's not already there. Previously, we did that with Node.js by typing manually, like add, save, or whatever, and we executed node.index, node.index.js. It would just create the things, and it would just stop executing. In this case, we can create as many users as we want. It's just a web page. It's running, the web server is running, and we can create as many users as we want. It will just add more people into the database, and every time we refresh the slash, the root one, which displays everyone, I guess, right? It just lists everyone. Every time we add something, whenever we refresh, we just see that it's already there. Because whenever we do the get request to the slash, it will just reread the file all over again and see that, oh, there's a new person here. So it will list a new person. So we are actually dynamically adding things into the database and dynamically listing the things out of the database.
Well, this thing that I typed in Google Chrome's console is the stupid part, because once we implement the nice front-end part, this functionality will be provided by some kind of buttons over there. So your users will come to your website and fill in some information, and whenever they click on that submit button or register button, you're gonna make this post request in the background, so that, like, this is something that I just want I just used to demonstrate how a post request will be generated. Okay?
So all of the forms in all of the websites, the things that you put your name, age, or whatever, all of the fields that you fill and you click submit, it ends up in a post request. The code on the front end knows how to do a post request. Obviously, we don't have a front end here, a proper front end, so he used a library, a helper library to just easily do it. In real life, we won't be using Axios. We will be using something else. We'll cover it in the front end.
Yeah.
And with Axios, where are you posting the details, in which file?
Sorry?
So like with Axios post,
Yeah.
with this method, in which file are you posting? So like
we are not in a file.
Post is a function. I'm just calling that function.
No, but where will
where it is saved?
It is
saved in any file, or
it is received by the web server, and the web server calls the add method of the person service, right? And if you go into the person services code, you see that it saves it into your database as JSON.
Person service. Okay.
It uses the person service.
It uses the person service.
So the last thing that I want to cover today is, of course, deleting a user. And that's the last thing that I want to talk about today. And we have a perfect example here, because I think clicked enter twice. Now we have this duplicate user there. So let's first create the rule about deleting a user, then we can delete this duplicate user, right? So delete is again a keyword in this HTTP world. The keyword that so far we have seen is get and the post, right? So the third keyword we're gonna see is delete. So whenever we want to delete something, we make a delete request. So whenever we want to fetch information, it's get request. Whenever we want to post information, send information from browser to web server, it's post. And whenever we want to delete, it's delete request. So after all those keywords, you might guess that it's app.delete, right? So what do I type here? Come on, help me. Person and okay, let's do that. So
if you delete the /person, what do you expect? Everything going. That's semantically true. You would expect everything.
So I need to find a way to delete a specific user, right?
ID?
Exactly. So I'm passing an ID here. So I need to be able to delete that user. So let me just comment this out. And what is that? Del. And how do I reach that ID? Come on. Request.
Yes.
Params. Yes, ID. Oops. And it is returning me a promise. I'm waiting for that promise to end, and maybe I will just say, okay, I deleted. And Axios delete. Oops. The first parameter is what? A person. And this one would be 4, right? Because I want to delete either 3 or 4. Do you think it worked? Let's refresh it. It's gone. So let me delete 3. Why am I deleting myself? Let me delete Arman.
Yes, I'm going.
Okay. And maybe I can create myself again. Yeah, okay.
Can you please get back to the code?
Sure.
Index. And now you're creating constant user.
They just delete it. It's just unnecessary.
Yeah, I don't use it. I can just say that.
When copy paste
you,
came.
but you were using the user constant user, but was it like if you go with so like
up,
if you can scroll up
Here.
constant user, yeah. Then again, so you have the constant user. Can you use the constant user all over? Or?
Well, here we are inside a function. So whenever I create a constant here, after this function is executed, it's not available anymore.
Because that's in that.
It's in that context. It's in that scope.
Post function.
Yes, it's in the post function. So wherever you declare it, it's only available there. Whenever you see this curly ending, it's gone. Here you cannot access it anymore. So it's only defined wherever it's defined.
So whenever a request comes to web server, it's defined, used, and deleted.
What is happening with OK?
Well, I
haven't seen where it was displayed.
Oh, okay, sure. Show it on the browser.
Well, the problem is that you didn't see it because I didn't print anything. Remember that this was returning me a promise, and in that case, I wasn't interested in the result, so that OK was lost somewhere. But in order to do that, I should type then maybe console log, right? Okay, let me delete Mert this time. So it's here.
You just need to put the then in the promise.
So these are the things that I want to cover today. Let me do a quick recap in 1 minute. Actually, we covered 3 ways of interacting with web servers, right? One is obviously fetching information from web server to browser. It is done via which request? Get request, right? So in order to get information, you make a get request. So the second thing was what? What's the other type of request we covered today? Post. When do we use it? Can you please tell me?
When you want to send data to something.
Exactly. So if you want to pass data along with the request that you are making from browser to our web server, you use a post request. And the third one is what? Delete. And it's obvious when you want to delete a resource, you make a delete request. Sure? Yeah, today we didn't cover because we kind of, I think they are gonna kick us out here. So.
Exactly. The only thing missing in the whole thing, you created, you deleted, you listed, you get. The only thing left is to change it, they update it, we use it for the push request is used for changing.
So let's, like theoretically speaking, how do we do that? Like we should create another put request, right? App.put. Then the first parameter would be /person. Then next, what would it be? We should provide the ID, right? We don't want to update all the users. So it should be person/ID. And the callback, you should be able to fetch that user, update whatever information you need to update, and save it and return to front end from the browser, right? I think you should be able to do that, the information you got here. I think I'm done for today. If you have any questions, I will be really happy to answer. Yeah.
Homework. And the homework is obviously just...
What?
No homework? Come on, this is for you. This is just for you to just practice what you do. Just advance your own project with this web server. Like please have endpoints, get endpoints, post endpoints, and delete endpoints for your own project that you're already building. So make sure that it doesn't only work with when you type node index, but it works as a web server. It listens to the request that's coming from the web server, from your browser, and you should be able to, whatever you are doing with your project, you should be able to create new resources, delete them, and list them, however you want. Please add it to your project. And please make sure you do the homework before the last day so that you could get constructive feedback about it. Last day, it's really hard for us to spend time doing workspace and check your homework.